Hello, lovely people, and welcome back to a new video. My name is Evelyn Barta, and I hope everyone is doing well. Those of you that are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. Those of you that have been already here, welcome back, and thank you everybody who is supporting me with my work and who is supporting my channel. So today I thought I will talk about disclosure. Disclosure that is actually related to the two pathways of humanity, because especially in my last few videos, I have been referring to the concept of these end times, where we are transitioning into a higher level of consciousness, into higher existence, and humanity is kind of evolving and ascending. And at the end of each of these epochs, there is a splitting consciousness. So as a result of that splitting consciousness, there are many pathways that humanity can go, right? And there are many directions. But most of the time, there are two probabilities. This has been happening all the time like that when we were closing an epoch. And humanity has been through many epochs, which I kind of talked about already. So now we are closing again an epoch, we are closing a cycle, and we are in this transitional period where we are experiencing the fourth dimension. And the fourth dimension is like a chaos plane. And in that fourth dimension, simultaneously are existing different levels of consciousness. So we are sharing the same reality, and we can say that two types of consciousness are sharing the same space. And one consciousness is the organic consciousness that is ascending organically, that is evolving organically. And the other one is the descending consciousness, which is having an inclination toward a synthetic timeline, toward a synthetic evolution. And we cannot really talk about evolution, but the opposite of that, when a change is not happening organically, when a change is not happening naturally, like the evolutionary process of humankind has to happen from the inside out. So by the bioenergetic field changing, which is changing also the physicality of a human being. So when something is happening from the outside in, aka replacing the organic human being with something synthetic and something artificial, or trying to modify the human DNA and the genetic code of a human, that is not an organic evolution, that is an artificial evolution. So it's interesting that these two consciousness, like these two types of consciousness, are sharing one space. So that is very typical for the fourth dimension. Like all these different timelines existing in the fourth dimension, all these different consciousnesses, and all these different pathways of humanity. So when we are experiencing the fourth dimension, which we are experiencing right now, things might get very chaotic because we have an opportunity to look at these two pathways and to become clear for us which one is for us. And in order to understand which one is the one that we want to choose, we need to experience both of them. So we need to experience the chaos of these two choices, sort of. And the fourth dimension is made by the higher astral level and the lower astral as well. So all these dark entities are present and are having access to the earth, but then also higher astral entities, higher dimensional beings are also having access to the earth. And humanity has been always evolving, and our planet has been always evolving with the help of these interdimensionals that were future versions of us, and they were teaching us. So this has been always like that, and this is kind of like the natural process of humanity, and it's explaining the non-linearity of time, which is also something typical for the fourth dimension, that past, present, and future are all existing at the same time. So these interdimensionals are not only our ancestors, we can say, but they are our descendants as well. And maybe that's a better explanation for that they are future versions of us. But because time is non-linear, we can say that they are also our ancestors. But we can also say that we are their ancestors. So it's very important to be now in this fourth dimensional plane, in this chaos plane, which is serving as a bridge, as a portal, that is connecting the old 3D Earth to the new 5D Earth. And that new 5D Earth in the New Age is being called the 5D New Earth, right? But then in different mystical schools, it has been called the new Jupiter. So we can see that Jupiter's energy is basically the new Earth, the new fifth dimensional Earth energy. And then even a higher aspect of that is Venus. So our cosmos is reflecting, and all the planets in our solar system are versions of the Earth in different dimensions. And this fourth dimensional plane is helping us to see clearly these two pathways of humanity. It is helping us to have a strong reflection on what we want to choose, and to choose consciously between the two pathways. And that is why like so many things are happening so simultaneously, and we have these two types of people. Like one group of people at the moment being incarnated, that is having a strong inclination to an organic path, to an organic evolution and nature and sovereignty. And then we have this other group of people which is having an inclination towards a synthetic path, artificial intelligence, and being deeply connected to this system that is telling us that we cannot move forward without it, that you cannot make it by yourself. You need the system. Like, who do you think that you are, that you think that you can make it by yourself, that you will survive outside of the system, right? So like all these things are coming our way, that we cannot make it by ourselves. It's this empowering path which is happening constantly. This information that we are being bombarded with about how little power we have as human beings, and also like about our origins. Not to think that we are divine beings, but to think that we are some bioengineered, genetically modified, genetically engineered, products of a test. This is what the propaganda is about now, to convince you that you are powerless, that you are not a direct fractal of source energy, but you have been created by some, alien gods, like some Anunnaki gods that came to our planet. So you can tell that they are warming us up for disclosure. So I want to talk about that as well, like what is this disclosure about and what is real disclosure. So there's this regressive impulse that is inorganic. And there's the other expansive impulse, which is rooted in sovereignty, in the connection to the heart, in recognizing that you are, yes, a direct fractal of source energy, and you have the power within you, and you have the tools. So there is this regressive impulse, which is based on fear. It's based on denial of our sovereignty and our connection with our heart and our divinity. And that is a pathway that is not evolving. So it's dissension. And that is the beast system, the antichrist consciousness. And there's the other impulse, which is the progressing impulse. That is evolution, is organic evolution of humanity, that is based on love, on the connection of the heart. That's the Christ consciousness, the Christ impulse. And it will become more and more clear in the next 10, 20 years that the civilization is choosing these two different pathways. So there will be two civilizations existing simultaneously, like two different timelines existing simultaneously. And what is a timeline? A timeline is a specific stream of consciousness. There is an individual timeline as well, and there is a collective timeline. So these two civilizations will exist simultaneously, and you can already tell which people are more inclined toward the organic path that is based on the heart and the nature, and which people are more inclined toward the other one, that is artificial intelligence, that is all about fear and replacing the human capabilities and the natural evolution with something synthetic. You can already tell that. But at the moment we have Pluto in Capricorn, and it has been there for a while. And Pluto is the planet of destruction, right? It likes to destroy, but it only destroys what is already outdated and what is no longer working. So what is happening now is that all these old institutions, all these old, outdated, traditional ways of doing things, and big organizations and political systems. So all these big systems are being restructured, and all the corruption also is being exposed. So that is what is happening. But in 2026, it will move into Aquarius. And Aquarius is about the future, is about technology. And it will bring challenges from 2026 onwards. And it is already happening, but it will become more and more clear for us which people will choose what direction. And this split will become more and more evident. So we will experience the presence of artificial intelligence in many, many fields and technology. And Pluto will definitely bring big challenges in terms of the technology. And this desperation as well when it comes to wanting to ensure a control grid by using technology. So it's very interesting that this is happening, and it will become more and more clear, but it's happening with a great purpose, as I said, because we have to see clearly what is going on both pathways in order to be able to choose. So we have a choice now, really. Humanity has a choice to include our spirit or to leave it behind. We have to return to that impulse that is inside of us, and that is the Christ impulse. And we have to understand that we are the future human that is emerging. We are the human of the new era that is emerging right now. And we don't need anyone to tell us what is our past. So in terms of the disclosure, for example, this is what I wanted to say, that what is disclosure? So disclosure is happening right now, but disclosure is not an external event or something related to humanity's past that someone is coming from the outside and is telling us and is disclosing to us. Disclosure is a remembering process that is happening inside of us. It's like a reconciliation of energy that is inside of us, and it is determining our future incarnations that will be higher expressions of us, that will be higher versions of us. So it's a reckoning process. It is not something that is being given to us by an external force. Like disclosure is the truth, the revealing of truth about humanity, and it can only happen when we start to remember. So disclosure is an intuitive process that can only happen internally. So what is happening right now is that all this, this control grid and those that want to ensure and to anchor this control grid on the planet are trying to tell us about our history. They want to give us information about humankind and about the truth of humankind by telling us what our history is. So we have to understand that we are not children, and disclosure is not something that is anointed externally to us. And we don't need to be told what we are and where we are coming from. We just need to remember. So that is the difference between these two parallel civilizations and this split, the regressive timeline and the progressing timeline, is that one is, as I said, rooted in fear and the other one is rooted in love. And the thing is that in terms of our history, only the past 2000 years we have knowledge about that we can relate to. So humankind doesn't have an understanding of its true history and the different epochs, past epochs and cycles that we have been through, because if we did have that knowledge, then our remembering process would be different. Our remembering process would be in alignment with what we are receiving from external sources as well. So the real disclosure that is happening inside of us is the exact opposite of what is happening externally. And it is creating confusion, and it's creating confusion on purpose. So real history of humankind never gained real momentum because humanity did not have the consciousness to recognize it. It wasn't ready for it. We did not have the memory within ourselves activated, but now that memory is being activated and the remembrance process has started already, we are beginning to remember. And that is the driving force which will help us to access any hidden information about our origins. And now they tell you a future that they want you to accept. They want to control your past and your history so they can control your future as well. This is how it's happening. So before you get into this remembrance process, they already told you who you are. That is that regressive timeline. That is that dark timeline. So they can get you on that dark timeline. And before you even start to remember, they already modified your bioenergetic field with this artificial intelligence and the liquids and other things, Neuralink. So you don't even have a chance to remember anymore. And you lose touch with your history and your origin completely, and you lose touch with yourself as well and your own divinity. This is what these dark entities are doing. So when we hear about disclosure that is being discussed on History Channel, that is being discussed on Gaia, that is propaganda disclosure. And we start hearing about monoliths, we start hearing about these different unidentified flying objects, and that the army, the military is starting to disclose these things, and they are being discussed in mainstream media. And then you know that they are propagating something. And then you hear announcements about the moon, about different planets, about Mars, and then you know that we are being warmed up for accepting something that is related to our history, that they want you to accept as your history. And all these stories about these different Anunnaki gods that created humanity, that genetically engineered humanity, and they came from Nibiru or they came from Mars. These things are being propagated because they are warming us up for something. Anything that you hear in any of these platforms that are mainstream are part of the propaganda. No mainstream platform would discuss anything, and no government would disclose anything that is related to humanity's real history, because that would mean that they would shoot themselves in the foot because you start to remember. They would never ever reveal anything that is related to the truth about our consciousness and our divinity, and the fact that yes, we are direct fractals of source energy and not some products of some evolved Anunnaki civilizations or the Greys or whatever. They would never ever disclose anything like that. So beware of what you're hearing on these platforms, and beware of the information and what you're adopting as your history, because it will interfere with your remembrance process. It can interfere with the remembrance that is happening through the heart and through connecting to the heart. So the information comes from the heart. Yeah, so we will be hearing more and more about disclosure. And again, real disclosure is an intuitive process, and it's happening within you. It's not coming from the government. It's not coming from them. So I wanted to talk about these two parallel civilizations and what is the difference between them. What is the difference between the fear-based path and the love-based path? And what we need to understand about these two parallel realities is that parallel societies is that they are both having an influence over humankind. Both of these two streams of consciousness are influencing our own consciousness. And the controllers are very aware with that. They are very aware of these parallel societies, and they are trying to get as many people as possible on that timeline, on that society which is regressive, the society of the inorganic evolution. So there's this regressive impulse and there is the progressive impulse. And the thing is about the regressive impulse is that it is getting heavier and heavier, and it's getting denser and denser. And it's because it is getting further and further away from the connection with the heart and from the divinity of a human being. Where the other one, the other pathway, is about the integration of the darkness, and it's about the integration of the light. So it's about healing, and that is getting lighter and lighter over time. It's like the alchemy process is the self-realization, the realization of one's consciousness wants divinity and sovereignty as well, is the realization of the sovereignty which is within you. So this regressive impulse that is represented by dark entities is resonating with the astral level, and it's only resonating with low vibrational technology. And because technologically is advanced, it can seem very godlike to other people. They can present themselves, these dark entities, as gods. And it can seem like a super advanced civilization that wants to help humanity, that is the savior of humanity, that are bringing forward free technology, like free energy technology, for example. And they will say that they want to enhance the human experience by bringing us as saviors. They will bring us free energy. And there are loads of mainstream scientists and in the ufology community as well that are propagating that are in contact with the dark entities, and they are propagating this free energy that is coming from a very advanced civilization. And because they are cut off from their heart and they don't have this Christ impulse in them, they are denying that Christ impulse. And that their bioenergetic field, so these interdimensional bioenergetic field is very damaged. They need energy that is outside of them that they can feed on. So they need humanity to feed themselves with, like they are feeding themselves with our energy. So we are a great resource for them, and they are presenting themselves as them bringing free energy to us, when in reality they are the ones that are feeding off our energy. And the thing is, like, people that are damaged as well, and they don't have the trauma integrated and transmuted, and they have this damage within them, they cannot tell the difference between these two societies, which one is the toxic one and which one is the healthy one. So in order to develop that discernment, the trauma needs to be integrated to develop discernment about what is real help for humanity. Because a high dimensional being, like a higher civilization that is really having the benefit of humanity and wants to genuinely help humanity, they don't present themselves as gods. There is no domination that is coming from their side. They don't want to be idolized. And when there's too much reliance on them, they back away. And both types of interdimensionals, the lower ones and higher ones as well, they are all versions of humanity. They are all us in different forms, in future forms, which is very hard to grasp for many people. And I totally understand that, but there are future versions of us. So a higher civilization is actually us that has overcome transhumanism, that has overcome the challenges of artificial intelligence. So they genuinely want to help because they know how to do that, and they can initiate us. They passed the initiation. They did not resist the initiation. So we share genetics with them. That's why all these star seeds, the concept of all these star seeds are coming from, because we share their DNA. And because they are future versions and they walk the planet, that's why they have access to the planet. That's why they can visit us. That's why they can access this planet through portals. But the higher dimensional beings, higher beings are having exalted DNA, exalted genetics, like, for example, the ascended masters that have passed the initiation. So what is happening right now is that we are being influenced by, as I said, by both timelines and both civilizations. And it's a real challenge. We have been influenced actually in the past 26,000 years. We have been invested in both paths. So again, like these lower entities and lower civilizations, they have this forced communal living. They seek humanity to live underneath them so they can lord over humanity. And many times they are higher beings that are coming to the planet with a very good intention, like future versions of humans, and sometimes they enter into the incarnation cycle in order to help humanity. But because they are being exposed to darkness as well as everyone else, and the same time cycle when it comes to their incarnation, they can really get caught up in this incarnation cycle, and they can fall very, very low in consciousness as well, like the consciousness to get very, very dense. So the difference between these two parallel societies is that one is based on sovereignty and love, the other one is based on a parasitic living, parasitic way and fear. And it's like the denial and the resistance of one's self-realization, living in a parasitic way without taking responsibility. And this lower society always seeks to mimic what is natural, what is organic, what is an organic evolution. And they can only do that with machines and technology, like mimicking organic spirituality with that. So we will see a lot of that in the future as well. Loads of these saviors that are mimicking spirituality and presenting themselves as higher beings, as parts of a higher civilization, because a positive and higher being would never present themselves as saviors. They would never force themselves on humanity, because they know that that would not help humanity at all. That wouldn't do anything for humanity. They would do that, they would help humanity and uplift humanity in an organic way and subtle way. Maybe through dreams, through some guidance, but not in an aggressive and forced way. And they would encourage always humans to use their intuition, and they would communicate through the heart. They will help humanity to remember. That's what would they do. They would not tell humanity about their past, about humanity's past and history, but they would encourage humanity to remember. Lower beings will tell you who you are. They will try to tell you who you are. They want to disclose to you who you are through different findings of ruins, discoveries on different planets, on Mars. And they would link themselves with this ancient technology, ancient temples. The Anunnaki would link themselves to these things, even though they don't have any connection with them, because they look more credible than to humanity. Because they know that they have to take advantage of this beginning stage, of the current stage of the awakening process, where we don't know enough yet, where we just started to wake up and to remember. They will trick humanity. You will hear things about the constellation of Orion, where these gods came from. And then the pyramids are all linked to that Orion, like those gods came down and they built those pyramids. And they very likely are Anunnaki. No, they are not. Humanity went to a lower level of consciousness, but we used to be very, very advanced. But we decided, it was our choice to descend so we can understand ourselves better. We can experience duality and polarity as well, and we can develop intellect and we can develop the mind as well. And then now we can find a balance between the mind and spirit. And we can accept and integrate the ego. And we can live from the heart from now on. So let the heart lead the way while we accepted and integrated the ego as well. So like the initiation through the heart is happening right now. So we are already coming out of that density, you know, that very low density. And that's why we have all this confusion, all this chaos in the world. So no, these gods that are calling themselves gods, they did not give that technology to us, okay? We are not children. We are not children from kindergarten. So higher beings would encourage and would help humanity to see the world for what it is and to integrate the heart and to accept the darkness as well. This is what their teaching is about. This is what the ascended masters' teachings were about as well. And it's very typical for the dark entities, for example, because their bioenergetic field is so modified and is so weak that they are being caught up in this incarnation cycle, but then also the fourth density. They cannot go higher than that. So they are being locked on the lower astral. And after a while, what happens with them is that their physicality is starting to change. They become degenerate, not only spiritually and emotionally, but then physically as well. So they lose their reproduction organs and so on. And they start to look very scary looking, these very scary looking entities. And what happens with human being is that humans are, even though if they are not connected very strongly with their heart, but we are having this inner knowledge within us. about who to trust and who not to trust. So when we are receiving information from a being that looks animalistic, doesn't look humanoid, right, that looks scary, or the sound of that entity is animalistic or whatever, we automatically reject the information that is coming from them. It's happening instinctively. So these lower beings are aware of that, and they are desperate to look human. And this is where the hybridization program, this is one of the reasons behind the hybridization. They want to merge themselves desperately with humans. So they want to create these human hybrids so they can mimic the looks of a higher civilization, of a higher human being, in order to gain trust. So this is their way to trick humanity, because they know that if someone doesn't look human, or it doesn't look like a part of a higher civilization, then humanity will very likely not trust that being. And we saw that happening in the Nazi Germany back then. So the Nazis were obsessed with the Aryan race. His name is starting with H. He was obsessed with that Aryan race. And that obsession was coming from this idea of, like these Nordic aliens, interdimensionals, like future humans, maybe the Pleiadians, Venusians, that are Nordic looking. And the Nazis were selectively choosing the DNA of these people, because they were the perfect DNA to merge with. So that obsession is going back to this idea of these degenerate beings wanting to merge themselves with humans in order to trick humans. So yeah, humanity has to go through some real initiations and discernment process, the development of the discernment, before it can decide what way it wants to go, which path it wants to choose. And many of them are very aware of that, but we have to understand that we are all being influenced by both polarities and both energies. And we are all invested in both paths in some shape or form. So it's a big challenge, but we have to be patient. And you would be surprised how many people are having this weird gut feeling about artificial intelligence, about the digitalization and the robotization of humanity. So I think in the upcoming years, this path will unfold for many people more and more. So we need to be patient. And more people will start to remember and intuitively understand which is the organic and healthy path. What is a healthy society and what is a toxic society? And before we call anyone sheep, we have to understand that some time ago, we were thinking completely differently about these things. And what we thought that it was humanity's past as well, it was actually just a trick. And we might be the controlled opposition. If I look back to my videos, what I was doing when I started this YouTube channel, they're completely different to the things that I'm talking about now and my understanding about myself as well right now. We are constantly changing and evolving. So we have to give chance to others as well to do the same. So this is what I wanted to talk about in today's video, and I hope it resonated and I hope it was helpful. And you can subscribe to this channel as well, and then also you can check out my Patreon and what I'm posting there. And if you like it, you're more than welcome to join. And yeah, if you want to support my work, you can do it on Patreon. I'm posting videos quite frequently there. So thank you for being here again. Thank you for your support. Take care, everybody. And I cannot wait to see you next time.